Hello YouTube, thanks for stopping by my channel. Today I'd like to talk about these school shootings we've had in America. And I'm sure many of you heard about the two shootings we had recently. There was one on September 4th, Appalachia High School near Winder, Georgia. 2 students and 2 teachers killed. And then 2 days later, a 15-year-old boy was shot in the bathroom, and that was in Joppatown High School in Harford County, Maryland. And then he later died of his injuries. So I took some notes and got online to see how many shootings have we had in America. And there's so many, it's hard to keep up with them. And so I did some digging, and I remember bringing it up to somebody, and they said, "Oh, Jim, we've always had these school shootings." And I'm thinking, really? Now, I graduated in 91. And I don't recall school shootings like we have now. We didn't have active shooter drills when I was in high school. We had tornado drills. We had fire drills. I think I can even recall, now I grew up in rural Ohio, and I think there was even some times where there was guns in the gun rack in some of the trucks of some of the students that drove to school. And we didn't think anything of it. And there was never an issue. And I can't even imagine back then if any of us ever considering taking a gun to school, taking it inside the school, and harming people like we see now. That seems to be getting more and more common. And so I had to do some digging here, and did some online research, and I did find, so it does date back to the 1800s. So we've had school shootings. I found one that the first school shooting was in July of 1764 in Greencastle, Pennsylvania. Enoch Brown School Massacre. 4 Lenape Native Americans entered the school and shot the teacher, Enoch Brown. Brown was scalped, while 10 other students were beaten to death with clubs, and they were also scalped. I know my parents' generation, they remember in 1966, it was a Charles Bell who went up into that bell tower at the University of Texas and shot people. So that's going to 1966. And then we remember these names. Columbine High School. How many of you remember that? Littleton, Colorado. April of 1999. 12 students and 1 teacher killed. Think of that. 25 years ago, that happened. 12 students and 1 teacher killed. Now, it was the deadliest high school mass shooting in U.S. history until it was surpassed by the Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School shooting in Parkland, Florida in February of 2018, where 17 people were fatally shot, consisting of 14 students and 3 staff members. And then here in Ohio, we've had them here. Chardon, Ohio, which is not far from here. And that was in February of 2012, and 3 students were killed in that one. And I'm sure many of you can go right on down the list and can remember them. Or if you hear it, you'll think, oh yeah, I remember that when that was on the news, you know. And it seems every time we turn around, there seems to be another school shooting, mass shooting. And some would say that the violence is going down in our country. And then it just seems like it's going up in other places, with Chicago and other places around the country, and lawlessness and everything. And of course, it being reported doesn't help either. And I think it's keeping it in our front view, and may even appear to be overstated, perhaps, and may appear to be worse than it is. But when it comes to this school shooting stuff, it's hard to ignore. And that's what sparked this video. So I wanted to do some digging here and see what in the world is going on. And you'll even hear it from people lamenting things like, I never thought I'd see the day, and fill in the blank. And other things besides school shootings, things that we never thought we would see in our society. And we're seeing it. Let's see, a recent report I found said this: more than 20 schools across the nation have been impacted by gun violence since the start of 2024. 20 schools. Oh, you can add the other two now, 22 schools. Nearly 50 people have been killed or injured this year. Last year, 2023, we had 38 school shootings. There's a news organization called Education Week, and they began tracking school shootings since 2018. And since then, we've had 205 shootings. Now get this, resulting in 488 people either killed or injured. Now that's from 2018. Then I was reading that in 1999, the Secret Service and the Department of Education initiated a report on school violence in 2022, and they released the Safe School Initiative and the implications for the prevention of school attacks in the United States. It looked at 37 incidences of targeted school shootings in the U.S. dating back to 1974. And they asked these two questions. Could we have known these attacks were being planned? Number two, what could we have done to prevent these attacks from occurring? Good questions. And so it seems we've tried to get increased awareness of it. And then these school shootings happen, and then what do you hear a lot of? Thoughts and prayers, thoughts and prayers. What else do you hear? Gun control, and that whole gun control debate. And you hear these same talking points for a couple of weeks. You'll see the news reports, and then it just dies off and we don't hear anything of it. It's back to business as usual until we see another shooting like we did the other day. So many ask, what is the solution? Let's see, I wrote a few things down. Thoughts and prayers, we already talked about that. Gun control, from banning guns to more increased background checks for people with mental illness. That's probably a good thing. You know, people who have some type of a mental health issue or been diagnosed with that probably shouldn't have a gun. Some would say we should arm teachers. Some say that's a good idea. Some say, oh, that's not a good idea because that could be dangerous for the teacher. He or she may get killed themselves as the police go into the school and he or she's got a gun, or they may shoot another student. So there's different camps out there on arming a teacher. Metal detectors in schools. I mean, we've got them in what? Courthouses. Before we get on a plane, they check our bags. We even got to take our shoes off, take your belt off, go through the scanner, raise your hand, spin around before you can board a plane. So we do that. And so it might be a good idea. How are these kids getting these guns into the school, and how are they getting their hands on them? And that's another topic. Some schools do have armed resource officers, and then my research showed that it's mostly in high schools that have the armed resource officer, but not as much in middle or elementary schools. I thought that was interesting. Some causes. Some say it's social media is playing a big part in these school shootings. And that there's radicalization going on. You know, far-right extremists, domestic terrorism might spark a young man to want to do something like that. Some blame the video games. Oh, it's these video games and how violent they are. But yet we grew up with cowboys and Indians and, you know, some violent shows and cartoons and things like that. But we didn't think to shoot up a school. Let's see. Some say it's the moral decline in society. We're selfish, no moral values anymore, loss of decency in so many ways. Bad parenting. What's going on with these parents? And seems like even some of the parents have their own issues themselves. Breakdown of the family. We're seeing a lot of that. And perhaps maybe absence of fathers in the home too. You hear that a lot. Some would say we should hold parents accountable, and actually we're seeing that now and recently. The shooting in Georgia, not only was the teen shooter charged, but the father was also brought in charge too, because he allowed his son to have access to a military-style gun, knowing that his son was a threat to himself and others. And rightfully so, he should be charged too. Some would say it's the school system creating outcasts, creating angry young people. And then the bully problem. The bullying. I mean, we've always had bullying, but it just seems like that's been on the uptick, where bullying is so bad that you have these kids committing suicide over it. and they're being bullied online. And so I could see how if somebody's being bullied, that's going to be a way that they're going to get back. And they do that. And I'll show them, and they get a gun and they go in there and they just take that frustration out on everybody. I'll show you. You're going to bully me? Guess what? I'm going to bully you too. I can see that. Terrible. Mental health is thrown out there a lot. Isn't that a big buzzword that you'll hear, and probably will hear it again from these last shootings? Mental health. We gotta do something about this mental health in this country. Mental health in this country. Well, if it's mental health, why in the world do we have all these mental health issues? In a country as great as ours, with all our advances and everything, boy, do we have a lot of sick frickin' people with mental health and depression, prescription drug use, eating ourselves to death, drinking ourselves, drugging ourselves. And sometimes people say, oh, I'm depressed. And then I got to ask myself, depressed about what? What the heck are you depressed about? And then I find out it's only a small percentage of these school shooters actually diagnosed with a mental health illness. Continuing on with my notes. Mass shooters are mostly males. You do have, there's been a few females, but it's predominantly young, white males. And so that brought up something that I had read a while back ago, a book called The Boy Crisis. The Boy Crisis. This was written by Warren Farrell and John Gray. John Gray was the man who wrote Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. And but just quickly here, just right here in the front part of the book, what is the boy crisis? It's a crisis of education. Worldwide, boys are 50% less likely than girls to meet basic proficiency in reading, math, and science. The girls are excelling. They are surpassing the boys. They're the ones mostly in college. It's a crisis of mental health. There we go. Mental health again. ADHD is on the rise. And why is that? And as boys become young men, their suicide rates go from equal to girls to 6 times that of young women. It's a crisis of fathering. Boys are growing up with less involved fathers and are more likely to drop out of school, drink, do drugs, become delinquent, and end up in prison. It's a crisis of purpose. Boys' old sense of purpose, being a warrior, a leader, or a sole breadwinner, is fading. Many bright boys are experiencing a purpose void, feeling alienated, withdrawn, and addicted to immediate gratification. You're seeing it. And they're asking themselves, well, what's my role now? I mean, a lot of these women now, they've got it handled. They've got everything. They're doing it on, they've got it. And you have these women filling in these roles of men. They're doing man roles. You see these female cops out here. They're in the military in roles where it was predominantly male. You're seeing it. And we're wired to be the providers and the protectors and all of that. And you're seeing that in society, not just with our boys, but our young men. They're dropping out of society. They're saying to hell with it, and they're watching it burn to the ground. They are. They're not getting married. And they're saying, well, what the hell for? What the hell for? You're hated. In a society that is against the men, the family court system is rigged against them. They get married. They know they have a lot to lose. In a divorce, losing their assets, their homes, half their assets and all of that. They've got to pay all that, depending on the situation, child support, alimony, and all of that. They're saying, the heck with that. I'm not doing that. I don't want to be a part of it. Yeah. What the hell's the point in it all? What for? And so they're dropping out. They're staying home. They're playing their video games. They're just doing enough to get by, to survive for themselves. Why go above and beyond? Why excel? Why? As long as they've got enough, men don't need a lot. As long as they got a few things, heck, they can have a one-bedroom apartment with a folding chair and an air mattress and their TV and their video games, and they're good to hook. And less stress to deal with, and living a life in peace and freedom. And I can, even as an older man, can relate to some of that. You work hard, you do this and that, and then you have to ask yourself, well, what for? For whom? For what? Yeah, I can so get that. A crisis of purpose. And they're having to now find new purposes. If it's not going to be family and children and doing all that was traditionally what men did. They're not joining the military. They're seeing what a fiasco that is. That's another video. I can go off on a tangent on that one. So what is the boy crisis? A comprehensive blueprint for what parents, teachers, and policymakers can do to help our sons become happier, healthier men and fathers and leaders worthy of our respect. Yeah. And I think what's happening here is a lot of our boys and men aren't getting the respect. They're not appreciated here in this country. They're not celebrated here. And oftentimes, I think men are just quite simply tolerated. And they're seeing it. I see it. And so you have a lot of men who are leaving the United States and going off to other countries where there's still pockets of traditionalism and where feminism hasn't crept into where things like family and children and those values are still there. So we definitely have a problem. So I think that's part of it. And so you can see this is a big problem in regards to these shootings and our boys and school shootings. And we have to talk about all these things on why this continues to happen, and then how do we then take what we've got going on in our society today to prevent these from happening again. And it's the person. It's not the gun itself. It's the one behind the gun that's doing all this stuff. And speaking about guns, found this. Guns are now the leading cause of death among children and adolescents in the U.S. This was according to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. No other developed economy has as many violent firearm deaths as the United States. Now, this is according to the Institute for Health Metrics and Evaluation. 80 to 90% of all school shootings in the world happen here in the United States. The US has the highest civilian gun ownership in the world. The next countries that have as many would be war-torn countries like Serbia and Yemen. And it's easy to buy guns here in the United States compared to other countries. Other countries, oh my goodness, you've got to be able to show that a reason why you need the gun. You got to be able to take a test. There's training involved before you can even buy the gun. Here in the US, go into a gun store, and as long as you meet a couple of requirements, and what is it, 18 years old, and blah blah blah, and boom, you can walk out with a gun. Too easy. So we can get guns. So that's all I really wanted to talk about on this. Maybe just let it out, my lament in regards to everything that's going on. I'm tired of it, like a lot of you are, and turning on the news and hearing of another doggone school shooting. And then these kids, think about these kids and being traumatized with these shootings. And you hear the interviews, you can go and find those online, of shootings of years ago, and these kids being interviewed and telling their story of where they were in the school. Yes, I was in the library. I was talking to my friend, and we were talking about what we were going to do after school, and they were in the library. And then the next thing you know, there was a bullet going through his buddy's neck. One went through his hand. I'm like, oh my gosh, they've got PTSD, like a service member would have. And that sticks with them and their whole life. And so when they hear a loud noise or something, they're going to jump or they're going to get down because of that traumatic event. And that's what we're seeing today. And then more kids now traumatized the other day. And I think these active shooter drills, that's got to play something too, that you'd have to do something like that. Back in the day, what was it, during the 50s and 60s, they had those duck and cover drills. Duck and cover. You see those old black and white videos of the kids going underneath the desk for the case of a nuclear attack. So it makes me wonder, if these drills plant something in a kid's head to then want to then go and do something like that. I don't know, just a theory. So it's a combination of things with the problem with our boys. This is quite a book, by the way, on everything that's going on in this society. It's just very eye-opening. Anyway, I digress on that. The mental health issue, the parents that are raising these kids, access to guns, the online culture, the radicalization. Maybe some of the video games does have a play in it, and seeing it, because it is very realistic. I've seen some of those video games, and it's just amazing how realistic it looks. So it's a big issue that's causing this, that we have to really take, I think, more serious, and to protect our schools better. And it's going to probably take more time to check every kid as they come in, but that may be a way to do it too, and just prevent these doggone guns getting in there, and then taking these threats from these kids more serious, not even allow them into the school. If some kid has been checked out and investigated by the FBI or local law enforcement multiple times, what the heck are they doing in the school? Mm-mm. Nope. You have to find some place else to get an education. Homeschool or something else. They better figure it out. Not you, no. Something like that. And if I was a parent these days, I would consider homeschooling my kids. Heck, I would just homeschool them right here at the kitchen table. Classes in session. And so that's all I wanted to do, just cover some items, just kind of bring it out onto the square here and talk about it, get us to think about some things. And I just hoping that we can get a handle on this so that we don't continue to see these. But going by the trends from all these past shootings, this is just going to continue. And we're going to keep seeing these. And this is just the beginning of the school year. How many more are we going to have? Mark it down right now. How many more are we going to have by the end of this school year? Are there students right now, kids and teachers, staff members, who will be injured or killed, and they just don't know right now? It's just tough to think about. Anyway, that was all. I just wanted to talk a little bit about that. I had to do some digging on it myself, and but this definitely needs to be something that's got to be a priority, because we can't continue to have these shootings like we're doing. It's just totally unacceptable at this point. Unacceptable. Anyway, that is all. Stay safe out there.